I'm conflicted. On the one hand, I was so impressed with Dr. Shannon Curry. This is the forensic psychologist that testified on behalf of Johnny Depp. She did an evaluation of Amber Heard, said that Amber Heard did not have PTSD, but does have borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. I thought her ability to explain her thinking, the testing process, stand up to Amber's lawyer, I thought all of that was incredibly impressive. And I didn't like the way she talked about borderline personality disorder in particular, and also histrionic personality disorder. I felt like I'm concerned with how that's being perceived by the public. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. What do the diagnoses mean, and how should they be interpreted? Okay, so Dr. Curry diagnosed Amber Heard with two separate personality disorders, histrionic and borderline. While they are distinct, they both fall under the category of cluster B personality disorders. Cluster B disorders are all characterized by an overly dramatic style, an inability to regulate emotions, and super unpredictable thinking and behavior. Let me first explain the two disorders, and then I will make my complaints about how Dr. Curry talked about them. So first, borderline personality disorder, I think, is the most infamous of the two. I think just based on the testimony, I think it's probably Amber's sort of chief diagnosis if Dr. Curry had to choose one. Borderline personality disorder comes from a deep, a fractured sense of self. These are people that, for whatever reason, I would argue most often due to childhood trauma, these are people that early on in their life weren't able to develop a strong sense of self. So they are very dependent on others to make them feel whole. And as a consequence of that, they are very fearful of being abandoned or mistreated by others. And so what happens is you have this interaction style where people are diving into relationships because they want to be loved, they want the stability, and they're hyper vigilant about being abandoned. And so the second someone that they're in a relationship with does the wrong thing, they're so sensitive to it that they will be reactive, super extreme, dramatic, kind of out of control behavior. And that behavior can be external, meaning it's this person reacting to their partner or the person they're in the relationship with, or it can be towards themselves, or it can be sort of a combination of both. It can lead to really distorted behaviors. That's borderline personality disorder. Histrionic personality disorder comes from a very similar place where there is someone that has a kind of fragmented sense of self, but their way of getting, of feeling full, feeling complete is by getting attention through drama, through being sort of hypersexual, through creating a dynamic where they are the center of attention, and they get distressed when they're not the center of attention. And I think the way that Dr. Curry went about making that diagnosis was absolutely above board. MMPI, mini mental status exam, clinical interview, CAPS-5, all of those things, all of the steps that she described, and I'll link the actual testimony here, her process was perfect. What I didn't like was the way that she talked about how these personality disorders might reveal themselves. In her effort to paint Amber Heard in a negative light, Dr. Curry went, I think, too far in that she was, she's sort of trying to describe how it might look, and she was describing how it might look in a way that would make the jury think about Amber Heard. But my real issue with it was that she made it seem intentional. And so let me just give you my perspective on this. People that have personality disorders do not like having personality disorders. And when they are aware that there is a disorder, they do everything they can to change the behavior. And so there are so many people that I have worked with that have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. That's an intense disorder, by the way. I mean, they say from a treatment standpoint, you're talking 7 years of treatment, and the kind of treatment you go through is not only is it individual therapy, but it's group therapy, dialectical behavior therapy. It's a very intense treatment protocol. But many people that have borderline personality disorder go through that process because they are desperate for more stability. They're desperate to heal themselves. And so I think it's important to note that this is not a thing where you have this person who is trying to screw over the people that are around them. It's just the opposite. These are people that desperately want to feel whole, and so they're doing whatever they can to feel whole. It's a maladaptive response pattern, but it's not an intentionally maladaptive response pattern. I think that's an important difference for the audience. I understand why she did it for the case, but for the people on the internet that are seeing it, and you have all these memes, I don't think that's the reality. I'll tell you this, if Amber Heard was the abuser, if she did abuse Johnny Depp, I guarantee you she didn't do it intentionally, I want to be an abuser. She did it because she lost control of her emotions, she lost control of her behavior, and reacted. I think it's important for people to understand that. The second thing I think is important to understand is that all personality disorders fall on a continuum, which is why they're very difficult to diagnose. You can actually make a very strong argument that Dr. Curry, only having spent 12 hours with Amber Heard, didn't have enough time or exposure to really be able to diagnose her confidently with both histrionic and borderline personality disorders. That would be a fair complaint. These are very difficult to diagnose. You need a lot of exposure. You need a lot of examples. You were looking for pervasive patterns of behavior. So for some people, emotional reactivity looks like you are attempting suicide in front of your child. And for other people, it looks like you're running away from stressful events because you can't control your behavior, right? Really extreme differences on that continuum. But we just go, it's borderline personality disorder, right? Here's why it's important to me. I know that there are people that have been diagnosed with histrionic and borderline personality disorder that are going to hear that testimony and are going to be distressed. And they're going to be even further distressed when their family and friends hear that testimony and think, oh my God, that's how that person is. They're likely to abuse somebody else. It just needs to be tempered a little bit for the kind of the public consumption. That's my issue. Let me know what you think in the comments, and hit the notification bell. I will put out a video once this whole trial is over, and I will react to it once I feel confident that we know what happened and sort of where the jury has fallen on things. Thank you so much for listening.